everyone, my name is Fern Ellen. So I have actually posted 3 videos on this channel before. I posted them about 10 months ago and I took a little break from YouTube, but now I'm going to get back into it. I have actually got a beauty channel, so if you're interested in that, I'll link it down below. This channel is just going to be about murders, disappearances, true crime cases, solved, unsolved, America, England, different countries. So I'm just going to be letting you guys know about some of the really big cases or some of the smaller cases that you may not have heard of, just some cases that I find really interesting. So if you do want to check out my last 3 videos, then please feel free to. And without further ado, let's get on with this video. Okay, so I have made some notes, so if you see me looking down, it's literally because my laptop is here. I have made myself a little PowerPoint just so I can get the key dates in, because I feel like I have a tendency to ramble but not actually tell you any of the key dates, facts, important information. So I've got this here just to remind me of when certain things I talk about have happened. So yeah, if you see me looking down, that is why. So today I'm going to be talking about the murder of Kirsten Costas. So just a quick disclaimer before I start, I don't mean any offence to anybody involved in the case, anybody that knows people that were involved in the case. I don't mean offence to anybody affected by the case or anything like that. I'm just sort of bringing together information that I found from different sources, different websites. I am also sorry if any of the facts are not true, or I've misinterpreted the wrong way, or I've missed out key details. And also, just quite lightheartedly, if I pronounce people's names wrong, I am really sorry. So yeah, I'm just going to give it my best shot, but I just thought I would get that out there before I get started. Okay, so I feel like the best thing to say before I start is that this case is actually solved. The last 3 videos that I made were unsolved cases. I feel like this one is solved, so they got justice in the end. And I feel like this video is probably going to be one of two parts. It's a very long case, and once the case was in fact solved, there were further court proceedings later on in later years, so I may have to make another video to sort of follow up on what's happened since the convictions. So I have sort of made my own inferences from the information that I found. The 3 main sources that I've used for this particular case is Wikipedia. I feel like Wikipedia is a really good website just to get the key facts out there, just to get a general overview. It's the first thing that I go to when I want to read up on a case, but of course you cannot fully trust everything you read on Wikipedia, so I do use backup sources as well. I also like Murderpedia. That's where you can read up on the murderers, so on the solved cases like this one you can get a background on them and why they may have committed this offence and things like that. And then also the other one I used was tvcrimesky.com. So those are the 3. I'll try and link them down below if I remember. But I have used a variety of other little sources, but these are the 3 main ones that I got the bulk of the information from. Okay, so now that I've got through world's longest intro, let's get stuck into the case. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to give you some quick fire facts about Kirsten, the victim in this case, just so you can get to know her, a little bit of background of who she was. So first things first, she was born on July the 23rd, 1968 in Orinda, California. She was then murdered on June the 23rd, 1984, and she was only 15 years old at the time of her death. So the cause of death was stabbing, but to give a bit of a background on her personality, she had just been elected to the cheerleading squad. She was very popular, she was on varsity teams, she was very sporty, athletic. She was the daughter of some very successful, affluent parents. She was really involved in her school life, and her group of friends were the popular, pretty group of her school. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on the murderer. So she was called Bernadette Protty. Again, she went to the same school as Kirsten, which was Miramont High School in California. So Bernadette Protty murdered Kirsten Costas at the age of 15. They were the same age. They were not in the same group of friends, but they seemed to have the same aspirations, same goals. Kirsten had tried out for the cheerleading squad and hadn't got in. I feel like it was quite clear she was very envious of Kirsten's life. Kirsten seemed to be the popular one, whereas Bernadette kind of faded into the background a little bit. So she was eventually arrested on December the 10th, 1984, and she actually turned herself in. And then I will mention several other people, the main ones being Arthur Costas, who was her father, Barrett Costas, probably pronounced that wrong, her mother, Alex Arnold is the neighbour, and Gina Protti is the sister of Bernadette, the murderer in this case. There is also a few other people that I mentioned that played some sort of role, but I'll get to them later, but those are the ones that were quite close in relation to the case. Okay, so the idea behind the murder and how it was planned really came down to an elite group within the school. So you could only join this group through invites only, and it happened at the end of the year, and then the older year would then elect or invite the people from the younger year to apply to join. So they were called the Bobolinks, and more colloquially named the Bobbies. So they were the in-crowd at school, they were the most affluent, prettiest girls. They were known for bizarre rituals that the girls need to complete in their initiation, for instance, rubbing mayonnaise into their hair, dressing up in their mother's clothes, some bizarre things that they needed to do, not far off from, in the UK, boys joining rugby teams in college and university and things like that. So some really bizarre challenges in order to pledge their loyalty towards the Bobbies. Okay, so now we've got the background, you know the Bobbies, you know the murderer, you know the victim, you know the main people that I'm going to mention. Let's actually talk about the timeline of events. So on June the 21st was when it all started. So the phone rang in the Costas household, Barrett answered the phone, and a girl was asking to speak to Kirsten. Kirsten wasn't around, so Barrett said, "Can I take a message?" The message was quite simple. It was, someone will be round to pick up Kirsten in a couple days time so that they can join the Bobbies for an initiation dinner. So this is something that the Costas family were expecting. It wasn't unusual. They knew that Kirsten was hoping to join the Bobbies, and given her parents' affluency, it was expected for her to be initiated. So Barrett passed on the message to Kirsten. So 2 days later, June the 23rd, Kirsten was murdered. So it all started in the evening of June the 23rd. Her parents had gone out to a baseball dinner. Her brother went with them. Kirsten was home alone. So at around 8:20 p.m, Barrett called Kirsten, asking her to put the porch light on. I guess it was a safety thing to show when Kirsten went out the house that there were people at home, even though there weren't. I guess so they weren't burgled, or it could be to make her daughter feel a little bit more safe. So Barrett and Kirsten chatted on the phone for a brief time, and within this phone call Barrett asked if Kirsten was okay, which she was. She was really looking forward to going out for the Bobbies dinner. So Kirsten gets herself dressed, she gets ready to leave the house. As she walks outside, she's a little bit disappointed to see a battered yellow Pinto picking her up. The Pinto was driven by Bernadette Protti. So Protti proceeds to drive them to a church, which was a little bit unusual to Kirsten, as they thought they were going straight out for a dinner, but nevertheless she wanted to join the Bobbies. She was up to sitting there for a while. She chatted to Bernadette. There are some sources that suggest that they were smoking marijuana or perhaps drinking. I couldn't verify that, but I have seen those sort of ideas floating around. Bernadette then admits to Kirsten that there is no party, there is no dinner, and Kirsten gets a little bit angry by this. She's a bit confused, and she gets out of the car. So Kirsten was annoyed that she'd wasted her time. She was annoyed that she'd been tricked. She was a bit confused as to why Bernadette would do something like this. Along that sort of time, there are sources to say that perhaps Bernadette made a move on Kirsten, and Kirsten felt uncomfortable by this, because when Kirsten then left the car, she ran to the nearest house she could find, which was the house of Alex Arnold and his wife Mary Jane. And Kirsten let them know that her friend was acting weird. She asked to use their phone to get in contact with her parents. Her parents, however, didn't answer the phone, so Kirsten asked Alex if he'd be willing to give her a ride home, because I guess she just didn't feel comfortable. I don't think she felt that there was a threat or that she was in danger. It was more just, I've been driven all this way, I've got no way to get home, it's quite far to walk, could I have a lift? Alex Arnold agrees to giving Kirsten a lift home. At the same time, Mary Jane notices that there is this teenage girl hanging around in the bushes outside of the house. So she lets Kirsten know. Kirsten didn't seem overly scared or overly worried about this. So you can kind of infer that there was no sort of threat whilst she was in the car originally with Bernadette, that Bernadette did not threaten her with the murder weapon, threaten anything like that, because she was very calm, just a bit weirded out and just wanting to get home. Which you would be, which is understandable. So Mary stays at home. Alex drives Kirsten to her home, and whilst they pull off, Mary notices that this yellow Pinto is following the car, and at the same time Alex is looking through his rear view mirror. He's noticing again that this car is following him. So Alex wasn't so comfortable to just drop Kirsten off, leave her alone and drive home and carry on with his life. He was a bit confused as to why this girl was following her. So they arrive at home. Kirsten's parents aren't there. Alex waits in the car for her. I don't know if he let Kirsten know this, but as Kirsten made her way up to the house, Alex was sitting making sure she got there safely. So this is where out of nowhere Protty pulls up, gets a knife, walks out of her car straight up to Kirsten, no hesitation, and stabs her 5 times. In total shock by this, starts running to her neighbour's house, Arthur Hillman. Arthur sees this through the window. She drops down at his door. He runs out of the house, puts pressure on her wounds to try and stop the bleeding, but she'd been stabbed 5 times. She was losing a lot of blood and she was in shock. At the same time, Arthur Hillman notices Alex fleeing from the murder scene, or the attempted murder at this point scene, and it does sound a bit sketchy, it does look a bit sketchy, but when Alex was asked about this, he said that he saw that Arthur was helping her, and there was ambulances, an ambulance was on its way, so he wanted to follow Protty in the car and confront her as to what had happened, or stop her from getting away, or stop her from getting away with it. At this point he didn't know the identity of Bernadette, so I think he just wanted to find out a little bit more and basically stop her from getting away with murder. So yeah, he heads off to find her. He follows her until she gets away and he loses her. So at this point he returns to the crime scene. When the ambulance is there, and the police are there, he's there and he gives his statement just to say what he had saw, and he explained the reason as to why he left, and there was nothing weird about it. So her parents then turn up alongside the ambulance and the police, and she's rushed to hospital. Although unfortunately at 11:02 p.m. she is actually pronounced dead in her hospital ward. So at this point they're looking for a murderer and a murder weapon, and it's now a homicide case. Also, to give you a bit of a timeline on the other side of things, Protty had now reached her house when all this was going on, all this chaos with the ambulances, hospitals, whatnot. She's reached her home and she took a walk with her mother, just a casual walk, which is so unusual. Someone that just killed somebody, but perhaps she just wanted to clear her head, create an alibi, chat to her mum, act natural like nothing happened. She then also cleans the knife that she used to stab Costas with and put it back in the car that she found it in, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Protty then becomes quite ill. She feels really unwell, she feels sick, whether this is because she was so stressed or she couldn't believe what happened, or she didn't mean to kill someone, or she was just overwhelmed with guilt, or again the sources suggest that it's because she smoked this marijuana a little bit earlier in the evening, but I haven't really found a source that verified that, but I just think it's relevant to give you that sort of information, that alternative view. Time goes on, Protty's back at school, the whole school is talking about it, is the talk of the whole school and town, this murder of this innocent cheerleader. Protty acts concerned, she goes to the funeral, she carries on with her life, which is shocking, but perhaps that's just her way of covering it up or dealing with it. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of this, but I mean, it's just a bit crazy. So she carries on her life, goes to a funeral, acts really sorry for her and genuinely upset. So no one really thought, could it be this girl? It just wasn't expected by anyone. Months pass, and in December Protty actually writes a letter to her mother confessing to the murder of Kirsten Costas. Her parents read the letter and drive Protty to the station, and she turns herself in and admits to killing Kirsten. However, she said that she only intended to injure her, to wound her, to scare her. She didn't want to kill her, and I mean, think what you like. I believe she probably did. If you stab someone 5 times, you know that it's quite likely that someone is going to die. But this girl was only 15 at the time. She may not have known that. She then admitted that she didn't want Kirsten telling anybody that she was weird or about whatever happened in the car. She wanted to keep that a secret. And she panicked when Kirsten left, that she was going to go and sort of ruin her life and tell everybody about this weird situation in her car. She sort of gets really emotional. She talks about how she didn't get into the cheerleading squad. She was so envious of Kirsten. She wanted to be like her. She said that Kirsten had picked on her a lot. One instance she described was the fact that she had old skis. Her parents couldn't afford brand new lovely skis, and Kirsten picked on her. So it was very clear that she was extremely jealous of the popularity of Kirsten's looks, of her life in general, which was sort of the motive behind she didn't kidnap her, but the motive behind actually picking her up under false pretenses. I don't know what she intended to do, whether she actually intended to murder her. Why would you have a knife in your car if you weren't intending something, or you didn't have a logical reason for it being there, which her sister did offer an excuse for. The part that kind of doesn't have me convinced is the fact that the knife was in the car in the first place. I mean, I've had a couple of cars myself and I've never kept a knife in there for any reason. I struggle to think of a reason why you would need one in there. Gina, her sister, did offer and did testify a reason or an excuse as to why the knife was there. She actually stated that she often ate lunch in that car and so needed the knife to cut up her food, to cut fruit and vegetables, I believe she said, which is bizarre. It seems really unusual. I'm not sure what kind of person keeps a knife in their car to cut up fruit and vegetable in the first place. Yeah, it's something you do in the kitchen. So it didn't have me convinced, that excuse. Maybe she panicked, brought the knife out with her because she didn't know how the evening would unfold. She didn't know if she would need it for self-defense or whatever reason. I don't believe that the knife was in there accidentally or unintentionally, or yeah, I believe it was put in there by Protty, by Bernadette. So let's get into the trial. So I've got the timeline events. You know how the murder has unfolded. We now get into how Protty was convicted. So she's turned herself in the December, and then on March the 11th, 1985, her 3-day trial has begun. She's now 16 years old, and it's sort of, as I mentioned, it was the talk of the town, the talk of the school. A lot of people turned up for this trial. Some were asked to leave because they just couldn't contain themselves. They were so angry, throwing insults, so they were asked to leave the courtroom. So it was a very sort of high emotion case. It was very upsetting for a large amount of the public who just wanted justice at this point. So the prosecutor states that the killing was intentional. They said that it was motivated by her envy, her jealousy of Kirsten Costas. The defence then agreed that the jealousy was present. That was the reason for her wounding and killing Kirsten Costas, although they do say Protty acted on impulse. Just to give you a bit background, so if you're convicted on murder, if you've got intent and the conduct, so obviously murdering someone, but the intent comes from did they have a reasonable chain of thought? Did it happen over a certain amount of time? Did they act on impulse? Did they lash out and find the nearest thing? For me, you can't really find a knife, take the knife out, get out the car, walk over to someone and stab them 5 times without thinking about it, without knowing what you're doing. I don't know, it seems a bit like you would know at that point. If the knife was right next to you and the person was right next to you, you just stab them. That's more acting on impulse, you're grabbing something. But if she didn't put the knife there in the first place, she had to actually try and find something to defend. Maybe she saw it and thought that's a good idea, but at the end of the day, she did, obviously she must have been aware it was there, and she must have picked it up in the idea and the hope that she was then going to go and injure or wound or kill Kirsten. So for me, there was it wasn't acting on impulse, it was jealousy motivated. Perhaps she didn't mean to kill her, but she meant to, you know, commit grievous bodily harm. I don't know, you can't kind of, you'll never know, but that's my sort of opinion on that. So her sister and her mother are actually supporting her in the court case. They're sitting in the courtroom with her, arm around her, hugging her, making sure she's all right. Bernadette's obviously very emotional. She's just a young girl. She was 15 at the time she murdered someone and 16 at the time she's in a court case. It's going to be really emotional. She probably regretted it massively. It was possibly an accident. So she has the support from her family. They then play the confession tapes and they read out the letter, the handwritten letter by Bernadette Proty, and the once loud, bustling courtroom goes to complete silence. People describe the silence as eerie and that you could hear a pin drop. 2 days later she is convicted, so she is found guilty on March the 13th of second-degree murder. She is given up to 9 years in prison. She's immediately cuffed, taken from the courtroom. She is really upset, she's crying, she looks one last look to her family, and everybody, the residents, the family, the friends of the victim are so angry. They say it's such a light sentence, she intended to injure her. She is put into the Youth Authority's Ventura School, and while she's in there she actually works really hard. She gets straight A's through everything. She gets her high school diploma, she then actually gets a degree. She writes letters to her family, to her people support her, her friends. Although there were a few altercations that did actually hinder her parole, which in these certain scenarios she did exhibit the same rage displayed when she actually killed Kirsten, which is what stops her from getting out on parole. So yeah, so that's probably as much detail as I will get into in this video. A lot did happen following the trial. I have my notes ready. I'll probably film it quite soon, because there was a lot that went on after the trial, after the conviction, after she was sent to the Ventura School, and yeah, so there are lawsuits filed, accusations for negligence, there is a request for damages. There's a lot that happens following the case that is quite interesting, and it's not the end. So there are over quite a period of years further action in this case and further information that comes out. So I would love to do a part 2 of this video. I feel like this is already really long. I really did enjoy reading up on it. It's such a sad, awful case, but it is quite interesting sort of trying to work out why these things happen and just how jealousy can really take control of someone. It's quite scary. So yeah, I would be more than happy to do a part 2. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, then please give it a thumbs up. Comment, let me know your thoughts if you have any other cases that you'd like me to research for you, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye!